they work better. And in fact, the figure that I came across in San Francisco was the traffic has actually been reduced by 25% after the expressway came down.
Hearing that, in some of the traffic studies, and we've been presented with a number of them, and some of them have been walked on, and there's new ones within the last week. Do you think that some of the traffic studies should not just be running these models, but also looking exactly at what happened to traffic patterns in those cities that removed their express?
Yeah, I think it's obviously a very useful exercise. It's the hard evidence that we have, both in those two cities and other cities around the world. And you know, I know it's counterintuitive because people just say, well, how is that possible? You know, if you take this road capacity down, it's going to get better.
So is that a bit of a flaw then in the traffic studies that are in front of us?
Well, I'll answer it this way. I agree with what Michael said about the fact that the studies have been very professional. I don't question any of them. What I question is the fact that, you know, they're best guesses, best modeling, best evidence, right, that people can put forward. I think it's really, really valuable to go. We have this New York envy in Toronto all the time. We think we're the little New York here. You know, what were the circumstances in New York that allowed them to take that entire, you know, West Side Highway down along the Hudson River and do an at-grade road? I've walked it many times. It's created enormous revitalization along the Hudson River front. So I think it's a very, very useful exercise.
Perhaps we should be augmenting. It's missing. That feature's missing from the...
I think it's an important piece of information for sure.
That's missing. And then looking at the terms of reference and the requirements, which I can't get back up here, I read them out earlier. The reconnect to the waterfront. The waterfront as a central piece, and I think it was you that said that the transformation of Toronto's waterfront is outstanding in North America.
Well, in fact, it's the largest transformation in North America.
Transformation with the $2.6 billion in economic impact.
Right.
Are we looking at the economic impact well enough by suggesting that the hybrid is saving the economy instead of looking at what remove would do for the economy?
No, I don't think so in my view. I mean, I think, again, I go back to, you know, the evidence. We just think of the time from when, I guess it was 1999 with the Fung report and when Waterfront Toronto was created and what has happened since. Phenomenal, you know, the transformation of our central waterfront.
So we might be shortchanging the waterfront to go for the hybrid.
Absolutely.
Both from the making waves and just from the economic point of view as well.
Yeah, I would say so, and I think part of the other problem is if the hybrid is selected and finally built, then you lock in that piece of the waterfront for 50 to 100 years. It's never going to change. So all that waterfront along the Keating Channel, you know, is under this elevated expressway. I cannot imagine that we would make such a choice in this day and age, not only for today, but for the future, when we're so successful with our transformation of the waterfront.
Thank you.
Yes, I was almost going to say, forget it, a lot of questions have been asked, but you just touched on it again. People who've come to speak today that are fans of the CAA report, they don't talk a lot about how the two things, the hybrid, or I love that phrase, retain and drag model, or the removal model are the same. They don't talk about the similarities, and there are many. They both unlock lands, plus 12 acres in one case. They do a lot of things the same. Cost is different, but they talk a lot about the hybrid removal meaning more flexibility. But I think I heard you go there. I'm having trouble understanding the flexibility piece. So could you help me with, it seems to me if we build the hybrid model, that's it for 100 years. You can't add or subtract or change signals or anything on a highway. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Do we, if on the lakeshore, similar to university, if something's not working, can a planner propose a change?
Well,
isn't that the ultimate flexibility?
I've covered that. The problem I have with the hybrid, in addition to everything I've said, is you do lock in the future. It's fixed. You cannot make changes to it. I mean, you know, it's what it is what it is. The remove or the boulevard option, you know, as conditions keep changing on the waterfront, you could introduce LRT down the middle, for example, perhaps. Or you could, adjust it as the situation changes on the waterfront. The problem with the hybrid is, it's up in the air, it's there, the ramps are down on Cherry Street. It is what it is. And I don't see any flexibility, frankly, in that changing over the next 50 to 60 plus years.
So it's not more flexibility, it's no flexibility.
That's my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Bedford, you've been part of this process either officially as our chief planner or unofficially as a local resident for many, many years. And what I see is a real healthy process that really is generational. Now we're being asked to decide within a month on something that has really come to the table, and then that will be it. It's not even coming back after that. Can you speak to healthy processes, planning processes, and whether this meets those tests?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as has been said, I mean, this has come about very quickly. It started a long time ago. It was put on ice for a while, and it's come back. The reality is, this is a huge decision. I consider this almost like a Spadina Expressway decision for this council in your term. Because the implications will be there for a long, long, long time. So I think it's been a good process as far as it's gone, but from what I understand, a lot of people are having difficulty in getting a hold of all the details, because it's very big and it's very complex. And, it's for you to decide, obviously, but, boy, you better get this right, because if you make a mistake, just for the sake of a month or two, you're going to have to live with the consequences. And those choices are not pretty.
So at the end of the day, we should, frankly, take the right time to make the right decision.
Well, I think that's pretty essential as something of this magnitude.
Okay, my second question is economic development, goods movement.
Yes.
That seems to be the big issue that the Central Toronto BIA spoke to, goods movement. That's one economic model. The other economic model is this kind of more tourist-friendly, neighborhood-friendly kind of economic model. Can you weigh the benefits of one versus the other in your opinion?
Well, I think clearly you have to have both. We have to have goods movement. Everybody agrees with that. But I think look at New York. Look at the delivery pattern in terms of the times of day and evening when deliveries are made in a big, big city. There's adjustments that need to be made, and we'll have to make those over time. But nobody's questioning that goods movement is not important. It has to continue to happen. But, if you look at that image that Michael had up there about the West Side Highway in New York, and after it came down, well, there's lots of trucks on the West Side Highway delivering goods. There's lots of trucks on University Avenue often on delivering goods, on Yonge Street, et cetera. This is no question about it. It's critical. But the tourism side of it, especially this summer with Pan Am, we got so many people coming here. I'll tell you one other thing. In 2 more weeks, there's, for the first time ever, a huge American conference is coming to Toronto called the Toronto Cultural Landscape Foundation out of Washington, D.C. Why are they coming to Toronto for the first time ever holding their conference out of the U.S.? Because of our reputation for waterfront Toronto and reclaiming our waterfront, investing in the public realm first, and creating a total transformation. They are fascinated by what's gone on here and by the obvious development intensification. Hundreds and hundreds of them are coming here in 2 weeks. And I think they'll be quite surprised to find out that we're in the middle of a big debate about actually spending an extra $500 to $700 million to maintain an elevated expressway and make it worse by adding ramps in places that it doesn't belong.
Okay, any other questions? I know Councillor McMahon. Any others? Okay, Councillor Campbell. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
And not want to go. So, a couple of quick questions. If the Gardiner is removed and we have this boulevard, you talked about looking 50, 60 years down the road, and I think that's obviously what we want to do. But in 50 or 60 years, that area will be considerably more developed, as will the area to the east, presumably. Traffic flows will will rise with increased development. Is it not foreseeable that this 8-lane road could become quite congested, and then the city will be looking for alternative ways to move people in and out? And initially, I can foresee the traffic flowing, what's 3 minutes, what's 5 minutes in a best-case scenario. But you add a lot more people, and we don't know how those lands down there will be developed. If they're developed with condominiums, people could take public transit. If they're developed with office space, you'll be having workers come from afar.
Yeah, it's a good question. I frankly think that, of course, the area is going to be redeveloped. There's probably a 30, 40, 50-year build-out for all of the port lands and everything.
So take me down that far.
And I don't have the crystal ball, but the reality of it, I think, is you'll have a lot of mixed-use development. You'll have opportunities in terms of a lot of people living close by. You'll have transit in place of all the types that we have all talked about, and we'll find the money somehow. I'm convinced of that. I'm an optimist about that. But the fact is, if you just make the assumption that with that increased development, that it's only going to be serviced through cars, I think that's very flawed. I think that, I just finished. I think the fact that the congestion issue, I'm going to be very blunt here, we're not going to solve congestion. I mean, this is a myth. The reality is we're adding, another 1 million people to the city, like it or not, and we're adding another 6 million people to the region. And the only way it'll work is by not trying to meet that demand by road capacity. It just isn't possible anywhere. Los Angeles tried that, and many of us have been there with the network of freeways. We have now got the gold star because we have the busiest freeway in North America, the 401, more than Los Angeles.
So no, I get all that. And what I'm wondering is if this is removed and we are left with just this 8-lane roadway in and out, in 40, 50 years, as there is more development, will this not become quite a congested, because this is the only option for getting in it, will this not become just clogged?
But I don't think it will be the only option. That's the key. There'll be all kinds of choices and mode opportunities to service this area. That's the basis upon which the council of the day under Mayor Lastman unanimously adopted the Making Waves Central Waterfront Plan, right, that it would be primarily serviced through transit. And that I strongly believe in.
Okay, and I guess the last question I have is in regard to this Keating Channel. I'm from the West End, so I don't go down there very often. I plan to.
Oh, you're missing out.
I'm sure that I am. I mean, I just remember it from 20 years ago or 30 years ago.
Okay, last question.
Why is this a desirable place to build if the Gardiner's removed, in your view?
Because we collectively, all of us, have embarked on this waterfront transformation for the last decade. And we're now looking at this precinct in terms of Parliament Street and Cherry Street and the new mouth of the Don River and moving into the Portlands and the gateway to the Portlands, all these things. The opportunity only comes up once in a lifetime. It is there. Some of you may have canoed down the Don a couple of weeks ago. And when you come out to that sewer there, that Keating Channel, it's unbelievable. But if that elevated expressway was removed from those lands overlooking the Keating Channel, it was a huge opportunity for public realm investment, for continuous waterfront transformation, and, as many people have said, for 12 new acres of development and public land sales and tax revenue forever. Very important.
Councillor McMahon.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for coming down and showing us your interesting slideshow. Since I'm much younger than you, and wasn't here at the time. Wasn't here at the time for the tear down of the Gardiner in my neck of the woods. I'm wondering if you can walk me through that whole ordeal and what went on then.
Very, very briefly. That exercise started under the old City of Toronto before amalgamation. I was chief planner of the old city at that time and got to the point where we did the studies, and then amalgamation happened. So there was not a decision by the old Toronto. Amalgamation happened, we started all over again with Mayor Lastman and the council of the day. And I remember the debates distinctly, and certain councillors coming to council here with videos showing how the disaster would happen and everything else. And what won that argument? Two things. One, You looked at it in the wider context of the lands adjacent to that elevated Gardiner that went